as we are given in theosophy, man is made of different sheaths. And it is very important to understand this, because otherwise necessity of reincarnation will not be very obvious to us. So what are these sheaths that we normally talk about? We talk about the higher triad, and we'll call it Atma, Buddhi, and Manas, which is the spirit. This is the spiritual soul, and this is mind. And these three constitutes the elements that go from incarnation to incarnation. But the lower aspect of us, it disintegrates at death. And these we will list as passions and desires, the astral body, jiva, or life essence, and then body. This is our physical body. So these four are transient. These three are the permanent aspects of us that go from life to life. This is our individuality. This is our personality. In ordinary parlance, this division is not given, and it is extremely important to understand who or what we are and what is it that reincarnates in us, because last week we talked about the misconceptions, and there's a lot of misconceptions as to who or what we are. Having said this, then what is it that reincarnates in us would be a relevant question to ask. So what is it that reincarnates? It is this higher triad, our individuality, that is permanent. Because if there is no permanence in us, who then is perceiving that is not permanent, that is transient? So this is permanent, transient. Permanent, this is immortal. This form is immortal, but the units that make it up, this is mortal, but the units that make it up is immortal. So we'll put here mortal, units, atoms, atoms immortal. They're never created, they always are. So having said this, we will talk about reincarnation. How would man, I don't know what else on the book, we shall read it from here. I want to read to you from this book a little bit at the end of the chapter. Let's see where it is first. I had found it in the other one. Okay. At the end of chapter 7, it says, at the present day, Manas is not fully active in the race, as desire still is uppermost. In the next cycle of the human period, Manas will be fully active and developed in the entire race. Hence, the people of the earth have not yet come to the point of making a conscious choice as to the path they will take, but will then be compelled to consciously make the choice to the right or to the left. the one leading to complete and conscious union with Atman, which is a spirit, the other to the annihilation of those beings who prefer that path. Now, this is a very succinct statement from Mr. Judge, that our destiny is towards perfection, but what nature forgives in us when we are unaware is one thing, but that once the mind is fully developed and aware of the possibilities and its inherent capacity of going towards perfection, the choice made by the individuality, the individual with the personality in that life, then consecutively will make that entity go in one direction or the other. They don't talk much about it, but it is given in small portions in different places. And at the end of the next one, it says this. The second explanation is that inasmuch as nature intends us to use the matter which comes into our body and astral body for the purpose, among others, of benefiting the matter by the impress it gets from association with the human ego, if we must use it so as to give it only a brutal impression, it must fly back to the animal kingdom to be absorbed there instead of being refined and kept on the human plane. And as all the matter with which the human ego gathered to it retains the stamp or photographic impression of the human being, the matter transmigrates to the lower level when given an animal impress by the ego. This actual fact in the great chemical laboratory of nature could easily be misconstrued by the ignorant, but the present-day students know that once Manas, the thinker, has arrived on the scene, he does not return to baser forms. First, because he does not wish to, and second, because he cannot. For just as the blood in the body is prevented by valves from rushing back and engorging the heart, so in this greater system of universal circulation, the door is shut behind the thinker and prevents his retrocession. Reincarnation as a doctrine, applying to the real man, does not teach transmigration into kingdoms of nature below the humankind. So then we see here two very important aspects we need to consider when we are talking about reincarnation. So having said that, let us just recap what was said. First, that our mind is not fully active, but in the next cycle it will be, and then the choices we make will be permanent in the sense that we're either going to go towards benefiting humanity or we're going to go towards annihilation by simply opposing the natural forces in nature that propel in that direction. Because we come from a center, and we normally denote it this way, just like the sun, we are raised from this sun which is behind the physical sun, the central spiritual sun. So we are a ray from this spiritual core. This spiritual core has what? Has love. What else? Good for all, right in the center. Where we come from, we are an expression of love and goodness and all the positive aspects of nature that propel us to move in that direction. So, I don't know if you're familiar with these, but we
yes, I've meditated for
okay, great. So that's one aspect, that we are all interconnected to one another as souls and a spirit. Only our physical bodies look different, so we think we are not connected, but we are. What else? That we are connected to all of nature from what we just read. That we are part of this great nature, whether we know it or not. So what we do as human beings affects all of the lower kingdoms. As we look to heavens for inspiration, the lower kingdom looks to the human kingdom for inspiration. So it is our responsibility then to raise up all of nature. So these are the lower kingdoms. Sorry, what's kingdoms? And what are these? The elemental kingdom, plant, botanical, plant, animal, and I think I left the mineral somewhere, mineral in here. So all these we are responsible for. Do we use this kingdom? Absolutely. Our bodies, our very soul, 1/3 of it is made up of elementals. So these beings, these diminutive beings, are in us. So how we use it is extremely important, because when we reincarnate, we just read that the impress we give to these diminutive beings, electromagnetic impress that we give them, they retain. What do they become when we leave this body? Skandhas. They will await our arrival into the next incarnation, because in each incarnation we collect unto ourselves, with this electromagnetic impress we put on nature, those diminutive beings that we used will come back to us. And so it is beneficent impress that will be appropriate in raising them up. Not only do we raise them up to the human kingdom, but we retain them there with this beneficent impress. But if we are animalistic, what did it say? If we are animalistic, in other words, our passions and desires, in conjunction with this personality, what does it do? It impresses selfishness, self-centeredness, and materiality on these diminutive beings. We are trying to uplift them. What are we doing with this kind of impress? We're sending back wherever they came from. That's where we send them back. We just read it. So we can't retain them in the human kingdom, because we are supposed to refine them and elevate them, not depress them and send them back to where they came from. So this part of us that is the individuality and goes from life to life, then is the immortal aspect of us. It incarnates from one life to another. And how can we possibly, if you use your minds to come to a reasonable answer to that question, could this be effected in one lifetime? We come, and you know, as a family, how diverse our units are in that family. Even the children are different of the same parents. So we have this inherent capacity that we have achieved in previous lives that we bring into this incarnation, and we develop further, and hopefully we are uplifting all of the elemental lives that we use to a higher level before we depart, so that when we come back into the next life, the individuality that absorbs all of the information that it has gathered in that particular lifetime will come up as a higher individuality, able to uplift even further these lives. So it makes it necessary that reincarnation be part of the divine plan, and which is, if we are immortal, and if we are to be perfect as the spirit in us is perfect, all our aspects to be perfect, to go to that center we have come from, then it makes it necessary that we reincarnate. This great plan of nature cannot be accomplished in just one short lifetime, can it? So we'll leave that open-handed. Now, let me read just a little bit more. says here on page 61. Now, the moment we postulate a double evolution, physical and spiritual, we have at the same time to admit that it can only be carried on by reincarnation. How else would we do it? This is in fact demonstrated by science. It is shown that the matter of the earth and of all things physical upon it was at one time either gaseous or molten, that it cooled, that it altered, that from its alterations and evolutions at last were produced all the great variety of things and beings. This, on the physical plane, is transformation or change from one form to another. The total mass of matter is about the same as in the beginning of this globe, with a very minute allowance for some stardust. Hence it must have been changed over and over again, and thus been physically reformed and re-embodied. Of course, to be strictly accurate, we cannot use the word reincarnation, because incarnate refers to the flesh. Let us say re-embodied, and then we see that both for matter and for men there has been a constant change of form, and this is broadly speaking reincarnation. As to the whole mass of matter, the doctrine is that it will all be raised to man's estate when man has gone further on himself. So this is a very noble and uplifting philosophy, that it gives us such a tremendous opportunity in our lives towards this perfectibility. So as we perfect our lower nature, which is called also clearing or transformation, what does that really say? That the coarse molecular structure of our body is being reconstructed, but finer of these lower kingdom elements that come into our body. So in time it becomes etherealized, because it is using more refined substance to build it. And what is that? As this refinement occurs, the light that is within is able to shine through. We can look at it that way as well. We'll give it another 5 minutes and then we'll finish it off. It says, this is the most ancient of the doctrines, because it was taught by all of the religions at the beginning of our historical era. The Greeks taught it, the Christians taught it, the Gentiles and the Orthodox fought. But at the beginning of our Christian era, for the first couple centuries, this doctrine was taught by the Gnostics in the church. So it was taught. It is in all of the books, but it has been taken out by choice. They decided not to teach it to humanity, and they took it out. Why? Well, we have to all answer that question for ourselves, because to this student, this is a crime that has been conducted on our behalf, because to this student's mind, that carries a very high price, because what has it done for us? It has dwarfed us to believing that we are sinful little human beings, whereas this philosophy says, no, you are divine, immortal beings in a physical body when in earth life. That, to my mind, sounds right, because it sits correctly in my heart. To maliciously or knowingly to take that out of these books and leave humanity without a guide towards perfectibility is a crime in my mind. And to what end it was done, we have to answer that for ourselves. It says, this is the most ancient of doctrines, and is believed in now by more human minds than the number of those who do not hold it. The millions in the East almost all accept it, and we know that. The Hindus, the Buddhists, the Chinese all know that they reincarnate because they accept it. What is the other dilemma with this? Is that if we put in the mind that we're little, well, we're giving direction to the mind that we're little. But if you give your mind the direction that you are divine, well, it expresses that divine in you because it's a reflection of our thoughts. It was taught by the Greeks. A large number of the Chinese now believe it as their forefathers did before them. The Jews taught it and thought it was true, and it has not disappeared from their religion. And Jesus, who is called the founder of Christianity, also believed and taught it. In the early Christian church, it was known and taught, and the very best of the fathers of the church believed and promulgated it. So here we go. It was taught. And now we will go to Jesus. And following Jesus, we find St. Paul in Romans 9 speaking of, how do we pronounce Esau? Esau and Jacob being actually in existence before they were born. And later, such great Christian fathers as Origen, Synesius, and others believing and teaching the theory. In Proverbs 8:22, we have Solomon saying that when the earth was made, he was present, and that long before he could have been born as Solomon, his delights were in the habitable parts of earth with the sons of men. St. John, the Revelator, says in Revelations 3, he was told in a vision, which refers to the voice of God, or the voice of one speaking for God, that whosoever should overcome would not be under the necessity of going out anymore. That is, would not need to be reincarnated. For 500 years after Jesus, the doctrine was taught in the church until the Council of Constantinople. Then the condemnation was passed upon a phase of the question which has been regarded by many as against reincarnation. But if that condemnation goes against the word of Jesus, it is of no effect. It does go against him, and thus the church is in opposition of saying, in effect, that Jesus did not know enough and what he was saying as he did. A doctrine known and taught in his day, and which was brought to his notice prominently and never condemned, but in fact approved by him. So we all have to come to our own conclusions about this thing. It is not dogma to accept or reject. So we can see from this that it becomes a necessity that we reincarnate, because this process of transformation of the lower kingdom into the higher, and for us to reach our divine center we came from, which is becoming a perfected human being, which the brothers, our elder brothers, the Mahatmas, the Adepts, the Bodhisattvas, all are as we are today. And they have continued with this and achieved divinity for themselves. If one of us can do it, all of us can do it. We are all the same, only different in degree. Now we'll open it for questions. Yeah? Oh, we'll give you the...
When you say that we have a responsibility to refine nature and the lower kingdoms, how is it that we are able to do that? I can understand, let's say, when we take in the proper foods in our body, and we keep our body healthy, we are refining all of the life forms that are part of our body. How are we able to refine life forms that are external to our body?
Are you not connected to everything?
Yeah.
There is an
like the food you're intaking, is that
interconnectedness. you're connected to everything in this universe, whether you know it or not. Because if you were not connected, there is no way we would be able to understand one another, would we? So, what carries the most importance? Your thoughts. Thoughts are things. They're not. Thoughts are impressed. Are impressed on what? In this medium. All our thoughts are impressed into this medium. Whether we know it or not, it is. And when that impress takes place, what are you doing? You're affecting everyone who is attuned to that wavelength, because we each have a wavelength we function most of the time. Depends which one of these principles is in the ascendancy. If your passions are in the ascendancy, this has the sway. If buddhi is in the ascendancy, then your spiritual life has the sway, all of the rest. So, or if, what about the mind? It has two aspects, the mind. The lower mind is part of this passions. This is our intellectual mind. Intellectual mind. This is not the high. Then we have a higher mind. This is our divine mind. Maha. There is a universal mind. Whether they call it unconscious mind or whatever, it's there. So, which one are you going towards? Are you going towards your passions and desires and you're concerned about your own welfare? These thoughts, your speech, your actions are all recorded. Whether it be your physical body that records it, or whether it is things we breathe. I'm taking in and I'm releasing these elemental lives. So I eat, I release. I breathe, I release. So they come in and get impressed and you're releasing them. There is no such thing as truly an atom. There is just an outline of atom. And this is what physics have come to the conclusion also, that it is in flux. It takes in continuously and gives out. Whether it is nutrients, excretion, oxygen, whatever it needs, the boundary of this cell, through osmosis. I'm sorry, you can't see it. Too small. Osmosis. It gets it in, and it also releases it. This coming in and out is a constant process. In this alchemical process of the body, or your mind, because your thoughts are things also, you're impressing the astral light for good or bad, because everyone shares to a portion what you're putting on there, and your speech. What about all these lives that are around? They also feel it. When we throw a book on the floor, like in anger, we have damaged all of the lives in that book and whatever else it hit. We don't see it, but this room is full of lives. So it becomes our responsibility to have this awareness that we affect everything in the vicinity of us, as well as our thoughts telepathically affect everybody else. Because it is everywhere stated that what you put on that astral light in your thoughts, there are some people say, God made me do it. Well, which God is that? But it is possible that they're affected by the thoughts of others because they have similar thoughts. It's an attraction, they pull it to themselves. So it is extremely important to understand that it's not just eating that affects the lives, everything we do affects these lives. And we have them in us because all of the kingdoms live their lives in us. We take nutrients and it has iron in it, it has potassium, magnesium, all these things in it. And you have botanical life in us because we eat vegetables, some of us eat animal life, and so we use them. And we need to become beneficent to them and not really kill them. Did you have a question?
Yes, I had one question, but in response to Andrew's question, you said something which caused me to have a very different question.
Okay.
You said God made me do it. Now, Flip Wilson used to say the devil made me do it. Now, and it kind of gets at my question, too. We have these creatures of fancy, God, the devil, etc., and there are huge masses of people that really believe that stuff. First is it what's the risk we're running? You kind of hit at that in your talk today, in trying to come up with these things, and it gets back to one of the Ten Commandments: "Thou shalt have no gods before me, no graven images." That kind of language. Yet we come up with this word God, and then you put in a sun up there, which I'm thinking God when you put there. Love. It raises the question: is God love, or is God also everything? I mean, that is inclusive of the entire laws of nature, if I'm understanding your talk today correctly. And this whole cycle that you're alluding to. And it also gets me to the point where
how many days do we have to consider your question?
One more little bit, and then the question is over.
Is it a question?
I think you basically said thou art that, okay? Which means that there's nothing out there, there's nothing that you said that I'm not part of. So the question is, what risk are we running by really starting to believe all this stuff? You know, separating out God from the devil, separating out me from God. God is up there, I'm down here. I'm at the center that you started out with.
So your question is, who or what is God?
What is the risk of thinking about God and man as being separated?
Good.
What is the risk of man and God being separated? Okay. Well, we're going to leave this here. What does this create here? The lower mind? Illusion. In the Gita it says, I am in it, but you are not in me. So a spirit is disseminated everywhere. She says, this is a circle. The circumference is anywhere or nowhere, and in manifestation, when we put this, when primordial substance comes about, because it is being emanated out of the spirit, it has those qualities in it that we just referred to. So, illusion is one of its qualities. And the lower intellectual mind acts as if it is all of it and fools us all the time. Coming to your question, the human mind has been dwarfed since the first couple centuries when Christianity came about and demanded that humanity not read any philosophy. You were beheaded if you studied philosophy. So our choices became very limited, and education or knowledge went underground. People could not freely illuminate themselves. So through through this process, how long has this been going on? Over 2,000 years, we have been dwarfing our capabilities. The human mind is limitless. This Mahat is limitless. Mahat is limitless. The reason this is being said is because unless we can understand the basic philosophical concepts that this whole philosophy is built upon, we will not know who or what we are. And these were all taken away from humanity. The dogma was fed and fed and fed, and now human beings repeat that in their own minds as being the truth. There was a documentary by Dyer on PBS, and he says, you believe what you think you are, and that is a true statement. If you're putting these limited concepts in your mind and you're believing it, in time that it becomes your truth. That's not the universal truth, but it becomes your truth. So in order to understand these very general concepts, the human mind needs to open outward to its possibilities. This consciousness comes from the spirit. This is our spiritual side. So if it is limitless, and what we see in our physical world is illusion, why is it illusion? Because what's behind it, what's behind the phenomena is the noumena. In other words, as Dyer said, the spirit is what upholds the physical universe, but it's not visible to this eye. What do we need to do? We need to cultivate our sheaths, our inner capabilities, because these inner sense is also part of us. And that once you cultivate the inner senses, you know. It's not something intellectual that is being told to you that you are part of the all, but at first, intellectually, you have to put it in. You cannot tell your mind, I am limited, I am here one time, and at the end of it, I'm going to disappear, and expect for it to expand and give you universal truth. First, conviction, internal conviction that you are one with this essence, that this spiritual center, Dyer calls it essence, and it truly is an essence. It's our spiritual essence, and this is where we come from. This spiritual essence is what emanates in consecutively bringing about something different from itself. How many levels? There is 7 levels. So you have to connect yourself to the core, believe your connectedness to the source you come from, as well as whatever else is in the universe. We are part of that universe. There is no separation. You can go to a DVD on YouTube by Jill Taylor, where she shows during her hemorrhaging of the brain, when she was coming in and out of reality of the earth, her experience. She says, when her right side of the brain, which was hemorrhaging, was not functional, she felt she was part of the all. She said when she looked, she could not see where her body ended and where the universe started. And when the other side of the brain took control, then she said she came back into the body. And when she was at the end, totally out of it, she said, how on earth am I going to be in this grounder, fit into this body, little body again? So people are now having these out-of-body experiences and sharing their experience.
Was she spiritual before that?
She was a lecturer at Harvard. She was
What's her background?
A brain scientist.
Oh, she's
nerve. She was
Yeah.
studying the nerve connections of the brain,
Oh my
Stroke,
God.
didn't she?
and she had a stroke.
So that experience, in fact, was something like good that happened to her.
Yes, because she belonged to the medical field, and she was not known and well respected scientist because she lectured everywhere. But you can go and
Jill Taylor.
Jill Taylor, she wears a pink shirt for this first DVD. All the others I don't know. That's the only one I have watched.
Jill Taylor.
And Jill Taylor shows that the two sides of the two hemispheres of the brain do not do the same function. One is with the intellectual and is concerned about the environment and what we are doing here, but the other one is connected to the universal consciousness. And if we allow that to come in, then it enables us to understand and also feel this connectedness to that universal mind that she says we are complete, we are divine, we are beautiful, we are one with the spirit. She says, I experienced nirvana while I was hemorrhaging in the brain. And how, she says, if you were given the choice, which one would you choose? Which hemisphere would you go along with? The lower mind with the intellectual aspect?
I've got her on the internet. Would you
Well,
like to
give it to
give her-
Carolina to have a look.
Yeah.
Pick it up there,
She'll
we can all
she'll
have
get
a
it
look.
at home. She'll get it at home
Okay.
because I have already. Do you
Okay,
have
you
any
want
other
more
questions?
information?
Yes,
Comment.
yes.
Regarding raising the nature of all, like including non-human beings,
Mm-hmm.
I recently took a class, a philosophy class, business ethics, and I had
Mhm.
to write about corporate responsibility to the environment.
Okay.
So, there are several theories that we have to talk about, like economic theories, theories of justice, and that, all that. So the economic theories say that the only responsibility to the environment that corporations have is that was what is stipulated by law, and the law comes from the Environmental Protection Agency (EPA), and the standards are very low. That's why we have global warming and like the toxics and the pollution, all that, because they're very low. So the thing is that corporations can, out of goodwill, do extra things. Like there are like the Valdez principles, where there was in Alaska some oil spill, and there are guidelines that corporations can include in their programs, but that's on a voluntary basis. So we have to see also philosophers for this paper, and then there's the Kantian approach, which is the deontology, which talks about rights and responsibilities, and the utilitarians.
Moral.
Yeah, moral. Yeah, and the utilitarians, which has some impact on accepts injustices because it goes by the numbers. The greater good for the ends. The ends. What's the help
end
me out.
justifies the means?
Justifies the means. So it can provoke some injustices in society.
Mhm.
So the Kantian philosophy and approach is better. But there's one thing that I found in the Kantian approach, that Kant only does not accept raising the non-humans to rational beings. So my solution was very philosophical, and I said, okay, solution to protect the environment is, okay, to go out of goodwill to do more. Corporations can do more, and then they can raise the entire environment and treat it as ends, not as means, because right now we treat the environment as means, like objects, something that is useful to us, and we don't give back. And I don't know what grade I'm gonna get to that paper, but that was my solution.
But
just tell me.
you have to address
As a business
greed.
person, I see a profit in that.
Okay,
Yeah.
greed.
There's no profit,
If
but
greed-
we gain.
profit
We
in
all
that.
gain.
There is profit, but
Absolutely.
you
Yeah,
won't
we
see
all
it.
gain.
Okay,
but
see it.
okay.
But they have to like invest in something, and
Okay.
corporations are not up to
You
that.
need to always look at these two things for yourself when you're doing your paper. greed is the guiding force to have more and more profit.
Yeah, that's the economist
That's
approach.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And are the companies assuming responsibility
Yeah,
for their
too low.
actions?
Too low.
Okay, then they're not accepting it because we have the Chernobyls, we have the meltdowns, we have companies
The oil spills and the greed.
not just oil spills, but the water. They
Yeah.
use
Pollution, like the
they
toxic.
pollute the water and then they allow it to go into the rivers
Yeah.
and into our drinking water.
Yes.
So greed depends how much profit. Are they acting responsibly towards the profit and in saying that equality is for all?
Because they are utilitarians and they care about profits. If they
And
say they're doing something good, they show numbers. Like there are companies like in the Fortune 400 or 500, whatever. The companies who say they have corporate responsibility are the ones who most contaminate the environment.
The environment. Okay, this again, that we are united, that we are internally one, so spiritually we're all one, and we're interconnected not only to each other but to our environment, because we borrow everything from the universe that we have, and what do we do at the end? We return it to the universe when we leave. So what is it that we're doing between that coming and going is what we need to be responsible for, because what does our Constitution say? Nature's law. I think this is here. Nature's law. It doesn't say human law, because human law is guided by these principles here. And when I wrote my papers, my lecturer said, I don't know what grade to give you. That's okay.
Yeah.
Grade is not everything. she never heard these before. That's okay. You introduced it and she read it to the class. That's okay. I might not get the best grade, but I sure affected all those minds around me. So she can tell you the same thing. I don't know what grade to give you. It's okay. But
That's how I feel.
this is what propels. And as we know that our class is ended, well, I'm going to make this comment. The Wall Street that resulted in the crash of economy and other processes was purely as a result of greed. Now, companies are not happy to make millions. They want to make billions. Billions. I don't know what kind of money that is. How much money can one use is what we need to ask. How much can we eat? How much can we wear? Why should I have to live in a mansion? I can live in a 3-bedroom home and be happy too. These are questions that we need to bring to the consciousness of the higher, because the higher echelons are supposed to protect the lower. They're not supposed to be looking after themselves. They're supposed to be looking after the general communities, which they're not doing, which means that they're not accepting their responsibility in this student's eye, because greed and more and more is not the answer.
Show some responsibility, but
Minimum.
yeah, it is.
It's not enough, because in nature's law, each human soul has its own place, and that each soul comes with its own gifts to contribute to society, but it says that all of us are not given the right opportunity for it. Yes?
Does HPB ever say anything, and this actually goes for every aspect of life, whether it's corporate responsibility towards the environment, or whether it is governmental responsibility to govern in a way that takes care of its citizens in a responsible way and not captive to corporate interests. Does HPB ever say, how does transformation, how can transformation take place in a loving way with those who of consciousness, true awareness and higher consciousness, to help those of less consciousness be more conscious? Do you see what I'm saying? Whether if the government is not governing in a higher way, how
Okay.
can those people who see this work in a loving way to cause that transformation? If the corporations are not functioning or the banks are not functioning and they're functioning with the concept of greed and selfishness, how can those people who have a higher consciousness and conscience be able to help in the transformation of those that are less conscious?
Okay, we can only change each human being one at a time. It's not external, it's internal, she says. That this guidance from externalities can only move people so much, but that you have to learn to perceive and use your own discrimination and intuitive powers internally in order to come to that conclusion that you're part of the all. And she does have in the key to theosophy a whole section how to bring about help. She gives tremendous impulse to education. She says that we need to educate our children not in a competitive environment but in a cooperative environment. She says the world solutions that need to come about from cooperative minds that work together. And this is a student observed with her own son, Jason, where he said, "Mom, I can do this work, but it will be okay. But the 7 of us can bring about this project and it will be magnificent." She says all 7 minds working on the same project, we can bring a project in portions and make it look magnificent, but I cannot do all of it in such a limited time. So this cooperative business is necessary for coming up with solutions to these great problems we are experiencing. Who created them? We have created them. Humanity has created its own problems, but all of the solutions are with us too. How long have we been in evolution? We are in the 5th race, which is the Aryan race. What's Aryan? Noble. We are the noble race. Do we exert nobleness in our conduct, in our moral and social environment, in our business dealings? Okay, it's a question to be answered. We are the 5th sub-race of this food, 5th root. This is 5th root. We are the 5th sub-race of this root. We are in Kali Yuga, the dark age. And it must run its course. It is stated that the masters of wisdom only interject at crossing points ideology that will lead those who pay attention to it. Because we just read that nature up to a certain point, the middle point of the mind, lighting, carries everything and everybody forward. But after the middle point, when it has been lighted, choice comes into effect, and Gita, Krishna, which is our higher self, says, I have shown you the philosophy, I have instructed you in wisdom, now choose as you see fit. He doesn't say, I will make your mind for you because I'm the spiritual aspect of you. He says, choose by using your discrimination and your intuitive powers. So this choice cannot be interfered with. Okay? We have these choices around us, and we have guidance in these books. I do not know how many corporate heads have read it and follow it. There are those few who are spiritual internally, and they try to bring about transformation according to their own wisdom, of course, not. But we have to go through these phases But we also read that nature gets rid of that portion of humanity that will not go on with its inherent program. And that inherent program is the ideology, is the divine ideology of the logoic center we come from, and it is imprinted on the akasha, and it gives impulse to that nature towards a higher expression of itself. And we are at the midpoint. Humanity is self-conscious. Thank
As
you.
we say our goodbyes for the day and so forth, if we wish to watch this, we
Okay.
can. This is Jill Bolt Taylor's Stroke of Insight. Just called it up off the web, so however much we
I
want to
will
watch, we
answer
can do
your
it.
question, but you can just look for a few minutes and we'll
Yeah.
turn it off.
I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
Here,
Amy.
this is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Because I have a brother who has been diagnosed with a brain disorder, schizophrenia, and as a sister and later as a scientist, I wanted to understand why is it that I can take my dreams, I can connect them to my reality, and I can make my dreams come true. What is it about my brother's brain and his schizophrenia that he cannot connect his dreams to a common and shared reality, so they instead become delusion? So I dedicated my career to research into the severe mental illnesses, and I moved from my home state of Indiana to Boston, where I was working in the lab of Dr. Francine Bennis in the Harvard Department of Psychiatry. And in the lab, we were asking the question, what are the biological differences between the brains of individuals who would be diagnosed as normal control, as compared with the brains of individuals diagnosed with schizophrenia, schizoaffective, or bipolar disorder? So we were essentially